Hey guys, welcome to, I'm going to rename this here, the Daily Word Bible Study. Let's go with that, the Daily Word Bible Study. This is the kind of a daily word where we go through daily, verse by verse, the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. So, currently we are in First Chronicles chapter 10, and just like in the section of the Bible that we're in here is the historical narrative section. So you start with Genesis and you go all the way to Esther. So it tells a history. Now, we just spent a couple of sessions in the genealogies and with Chronicles, the first 9 chapters of Chronicles. Those 9 chapters. By the way, you're going to see where some of this is going to play out. If you were paying attention to the genealogies, and again, I didn't go through all of them, but some of them that was kind of strange. We're going to see in this book. For example, David's musicians, things like that. When we get to the kings, we see that, as we said before, as I said before anyway, there are two. The original writings were one book. You could say Kings. By the way, the titles themselves are the titles, and then how they divided up First and Second Kings were done by translators, scholars. Okay, so it wasn't in the original writings. So the same thing with Chronicles. Nothing to me debate or fight over. Okay, it just is at this point. The kings told the narrative from the point of view of the northern kingdoms, the 10 tribes, with overlapping of the kings of Judah. And then they also told the narrative from a more political. We saw a lot more the political side of it. The ruthlessness of kings, their sons, and things like that. Then now as we get into Chronicles, we're going to see the narrative from the point of view of the southern kingdoms, Judah. Primarily the focus is on establishing the bloodline, the true bloodline of Jesus, as it comes through David, going back to Abraham. Extremely important, prophetically and everything else. So that's where we're at. So let's get into it. Verse 1, it says, the Philistines fought against Israel, and Israel's men fled from them and were killed at Mount Gilboa. Now, just this Chronicle starts right at David's kingdom. So this is the end of Saul's life. Saul was the first king. God put him in office. He was you go back to Samuel, 1 Samuel, and you get more detail, of course, of Samuel's wicked life, how he turned out to be really just wicked before God, and so we're going to see here God is really judging the household of Saul, and that's going to be wise, so that there is no mixture. Now, we're going to see one of the, to me, saddest things was the death of Saul. Let me also remind you, we don't have at this point all of the details of Saul, because that's not the focus of the narrative of the writing. Now, I say that because even though I said it is sad that Jonathan, who was David's friend, close friend, he's actually killed. But make no mistake about it, he was killed for his sins. In other words, he wasn't killed just because of his association with Saul. He was killed because of his sins. We just don't have the details here, because that's not the focus of the narrative. It's also wise that you don't have Saul and David kind of together in his kingdom. If you remember the revolt of Absalom, David's own son, when he tried to dethrone his father, Shemiah, one of Saul's descendants, came out and says, now, you're a bloody man, and God's going to restore the kingdom to the household of Saul. My point is that demonstrated and proved more than anything why there shouldn't be, in other words, Saul and his descendants, his line, need to be completely out of the way. All right. Verse 2, the Philistines pursued Saul and his sons and killed Saul's sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchiel. And again, once again, let me just say this. I am butchering these Hebrew names. I'm not even pretending to pronounce them correctly. I haven't, so right up front, I know, and much apologies, I am butchering these names, the pronunciation. The names. Verse 3. When the battle intensified against Saul, the archers found him and severely wounded him. And the Saul said to his armor bearer, draw your sword and run me through with it, or these uncircumcised men will come and torture me. But his armor bearer wouldn't do it because he was terrified. Then Saul took his own sword and fell on it. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his own sword and died. So again, one of his final acts, you could tell, and this is what Saul's life has been about, rebelling against God, doing things his own way, which was always the wrong way. Verse 6. So Saul and his 3 sons died. His whole house died together. And when all of the men of Israel in the valley saw that the army had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their cities and fled. So the Philistines came and settled in them. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his sons dead on Mount Gilboa. They stripped Saul, cut off his head, took his armor, and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to spread the good news to their idols and to their people. They put his armor in the temple of their gods and hung his skull in the temple of Dagon. And when Jabesh Gilead heard everything the Philistines had done to Saul, all the brave men set out and to retrieve the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons and brought them to Jabesh. They brought them to Jabesh. They buried their bones under the ark in Jabesh and fasted 7 days. So Saul died. Saul died. I'm going to check something. I believe they burned him though. Saul died for his unfaithfulness to the Lord. He did not keep the Lord's word. He even consulted a medium for guidance. He did not require the Lord, so the Lord put him to death and turned the kingdom over to David, Jesse, his son. Now, you see this here. Again, how this verse 13 and 14 kind of captures the life of Saul. And he was unfaithful. He did not keep the word of the Lord. And let me see here. Oh, yes. That's what I thought they did. All right. I wanted to confirm something right here. They actually did burn his body. This is reported in 1 Samuel chapter 31. And then they buried his bones. Okay. But again, his tragic life was because he just refused to obey. All right. So chapter 11. Now, I think that, as I said, this is important that we see the end of Saul, that his whole line is cut off, so that now David has a kind of fresh start, as it were. Verse 1. Let me just say this. Later on, we're going to see even Saul will kind of some of his actions will hunt David from the grave. We'll look at that later when we get further down towards the end of this book. Verse 1, all of Israel came together to David at Hebron and said, here we are, your own flesh and blood. Even when Saul was king, you led us out to battle and brought us back. The Lord your God also said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel and be ruler over my people Israel. Now you remember this is true, that God had blessed David so that it caused actually jealousy among Saul. That because David was better and everybody looked at it and he saw that it was better. So all praise is not good. It's the lesson here. But anyway, verse 3. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron. David made a covenant with them at Hebron in the Lord's presence. And they anointed David king over Israel in keeping with the Lord's word through Samuel. So it was kind of a journey from David because he was on the run. Saul was trying to kill him because he could see that the people liked David. Everybody favored David. And even when the prophet Samuel, whom everyone respected, including Saul, prophesied that David was going to be king, the rebellious acts of Saul was he was trying to overthrow the decree of God. Verse 4, David and all his men marched to Jerusalem, and that is Jabesh. The Jebusites who inhabited the land were there. The inhabitants of Jabesh said to David, you would never get in here. Yet David did capture the stronghold of Zion, that is the city of David. So right here we kind of get one of the first mentions of what Zion is. Now today there's some different connotations of Zion, okay, which we won't get into. Jerusalem is Zion, also known as the city of David. It was formerly, and then it was occupied for centuries by the Jebusites, who were actually the descendants of Ham. We saw that in the genealogies that we studied. See, I told you some of these genealogies kind of pay off. Verse 5. Verse 6. David said, whoever is first to kill the Jebusites will become chief commander. Joab, son of Zeruiah, went up first, so he became the chief. Now, we're getting more insight here, right, to the relationship of Joab and David. You remember even in the genealogies, we know that Zeruiah is David's sister. He has two sisters. And so Zeruiah's sons, Joab, Abishai, and Azai, I know I butchered the names, were Zeruiah's sons, so they were David's nephews. Now, Joab was a supreme military commander, but he was a wicked man. But you kind of see now the nepotism here. But also, it was David kind of said, look, whoever takes Jerusalem, or would be chief, and Joab took him. He was a great military commander. Okay. And by the way, he never had any hopes of any aspirations of being king or anything, a ruler. He kind of reminds me of Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI. Hoover never wanted to be president, senator, anything else. He loved being the head of the FBI, and he reigned almost, I think, 50 years or whatever. But anyway, Joab, the same thing. Joab was a supreme commander, and now we see why he becomes the chief commander, because he conquered Jerusalem. Verse 7. Then David took up residence in the stronghold, therefore it was called, the city of David. He built up the city all the way around and supported the terraces and the surrounding parts. And Joab restored the rest of the city. And David steadily grew more powerful, and the Lord of hosts was with him. So we kind of see this here relationship. David, again, Joab served him, and Joab's attitude was, just leave me alone, let me be military. But anyway, we get more on that later. We saw some of it in in 2 Samuel, where when David tried to throw out Joab, he wasn't having it. Even killed his cousin. Verse 10. The following were the chiefs of David's warriors, who together with all of Israel strongly supported him in his reign to make him king according to the word of Israel. This was the list of David's warriors. Now, some of these warriors, this is the list here we're going to see. It's a very interesting list because it shows how powerful these guys were. Let me read through them. Jesabim, son of Hakimini, was chief of the 30. Now, these 30 were, as you're going to see, you had to be a powerful dude to be a part of in this list of 30 here. Okay, he says he wielded his spear against 300 and killed them at one time. Right, like I say, in order. Now remember, David himself was a supreme military commander. So David wasn't just some weakling either. Solomon, on the other hand, his son, wasn't the most, he was more, you can say Solomon was a lover, literally. Solomon was a lover and not a fighter. David was both. David was the ultimate man. And so in order to hang with David in this, you had to have accomplished some mighty feats here. Verse 12. After him, Eleazar, son of Dodo, an Ahorahite, was one of the 3 warriors. He was with David at Pasadam when the Philistines had gathered there for battle. And there was a portion of the field of barley where the troops had fled from the Philistines. But Eleazar and David took up their stand in the middle of the field and defeated them. They killed the Philistines, and the Lord gave them great victory. 3 of his 30 chief men went down to David at the rock of the cave of Adullam, when the Philistines' army was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. And at that time David was in the stronghold, and the Philistines' garrison was at Bethlehem. And David was extremely thirsty and said, if only someone would bring me a water to drink from the well of the city gate of Bethlehem. So the 3 broke through the Philistines' camp, drew water from the well at the gate of Bethlehem, and they brought it back to David, and he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out to the Lord. David said, I would never do such a thing in the presence of God. How can I drink the blood of these men who risked their lives? But they had brought it at the risk of their own lives, so David would not bring it. Such were the exploits of the 3 warriors. So these guys, David just kind of probably made a statement and probably said, man, I'm just thirsty. Boy, I can just think, man, if I had some water there. And these guys said, okay. And they went and broke through it actually and got David this jug of water. And like I say, he refused to drink it. Abishai, Joab's brother, was leader of the 3. He raised up his spear against 300 men and killed them, gaining the reputation among the 3. He was more honorable than the 3. He became their commander, even though he did not become one of the 3. Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, was son of a brave man from Kazio, and a man of many exploits. Benaniah killed 2 sons of Ariel of Moab. He went down to a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. He also killed an Egyptian who was 7.5 feet tall. Even though the Egyptian had a spear in his hand, like a weaver's beam, Benaniah went down to him with a club, snatched the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and killed him with his own spear. And these were the exploits of Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, who had a reputation among the 3 warriors. He was most honorable of the 30, but did not become one of the 3. David put him in charge of his bodyguard. Then the fighting men were. Now he's going to give a lot of these, again, just army. These guys were, you wanted these kind of guys in your army too, especially, you wanted these guys rolling with you. It was Joab's brother, Ashiel, Ahilai, son of Dodo of Bethlehem, Shammah the Harite, Halex of Pelonite, Ira son of Icanish, and Toki, Abiezer, and the Ananite, Sibbecaiah, Kai, the Hushite, Eli, Hoplite, Midnight. Okay, so let me just skip through some of this because I'll get to the good ones. These are all these 30 men that were with David. Okay, Joab, Brother Nathan. I'm sparing you by butchering these names. But I do want to come to verse 41, and I want you to see where it says Uriah the Hittite. Now, you remember Uriah the Hittite. David probably, this was a bad stain on David, because Uriah was Bathsheba, who was Solomon's mother. But Uriah, remember, Bathsheba was married to Uriah, and David slept with her, and then he tried to cover up his sin by bringing Uriah home, thinking, and I can see why, Bathsheba was a beautiful woman. He figured, man, come home and sleep with his fine wife. After all, I did. But Uriah was faithful and said, I can't do that while my brothers are out fighting. And then finally, David sent letters and had Uriah murdered. So this was bad. So verse 42, some more of these names here, Joseph and verse 40, OBJ. Okay, so these are all the names. Again, sorry guys that I just spared you because these names, how to pronounce these names are just, anyway, so we're gonna get into the next chapter. You know, don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. Hit that subscribe button. Remember, all comments are welcome. I'll see you in the next study.